changing places, the law of constructive transition. So in this chapter, the Arthur starts off with a story about when in his early ministry, where he was about, I guess, 9 months into his ministry, had a few families. He was just starting out, and he got this opportunity to purchase a building. So he prayed about it, had everybody in his ministry pray about it, you know, and he had a really good feeling about it. They were all set, everybody agreed that it was time to go ahead and buy this building. However, his mentor did not think that they should buy the building. Now, this is a person that has been with him throughout his ministry at the very, very beginning, somebody he leaned on, somebody he trusted, and had a very good relationship with. So the mentor, you know, he had a lot of experience, and he was telling him, you know, it's going to be hard financially to start a new church, you know, just the different downfalls about buying a new building at this early in his ministry. But the author, who was the new pastor, he felt that this is what God was wanting him to do. And he felt torn. Now, does he go with what God is telling him, or, you know, follow his mentor's advice? So of course he went with what God told him to do, and he grew his membership, and it was a very positive thing in his ministry. They bought the building and renovated it, and it increased, and like I said, it increased his membership. So that's an example of how over time a relationship can evolve. How well, let me go on. So there are moments in life when your best relationships can become your biggest problems, which is this is one of the examples. Mm-hmm. Sometimes in order to move the way God wants you to move, we need to get some people out of our lives, or not get them out of our lives, but change the way we relate to them. So the mentor kind of fell a little bit in his level of importance in this guy's life, because now they didn't fall out or anything. They very much kept love in their relationship and everything. It's just that he's kind of fell back on how much he depended on this person. So like I said, not by ending a relationship, but you're going to restructure it in a healthier way, so you can continue to be friends with this person, or associates or whatever, but the dynamic is going to change. So this guy's mentor may not be his mentor anymore. He'll just be a good, stable friend. You know, it's not somebody that he's going to rely on like he did before. Because like I said, this guy was trying to pull him away from where God, now it wasn't saying, you know, that he was doing anything bad. It's just what this guy thought was best for his mentee, I guess, what you call him? Yeah. So a constructive transition is a change in the place or significance a person holds in your life. Like I said, in this situation, the mentor may not hold that mentorship position in this person's life. A best friend or confidant becomes just a friend in the broader sense. Like I said, a mentor maybe becomes a colleague or a peer. So their relationship dynamic is going to change when you do it in a constructive transition scenario. Like these adjustments don't mean ending the relationship. You're just changing the way you relate to one another. You're moving someone to a different role than they had in your life, which isn't a bad thing. And it doesn't mean you fall away, or, you know, in the relationship, or you fail in the relationship. It's just the dynamic is changing over time, like anything else. Mm-hmm. So the point is that you're constantly changing and evolving. And then so certain relationships also need to change and evolve as you go about your godly walk. So let's go back over here. Okay. So what would it take for a relationship to reach a point where a constructive transition is necessary? So when a major serious situation occurs and you realize that this person is standing between you and your destiny. So this guy's mentor was standing in his way between his destiny of what God wanted him to do. So who knows what would have happened if he just decided not to buy this building. Like I said, after he bought the building, they were able to renovate it, and his membership grew exponentially. So in a constructive transition, it's not just a difference of opinion. It's not like they're Democrat and you're Republican. This situation, it's this person is preventing you from doing what God is wanting you to do. The person can't see where God is leading you and will not support you. That's kind of the issue. So when a transition in a relationship is necessary, it's done with the goal of maintaining a great relationship, just with the new different roles for both people. And we don't want to rely too much on a relationship and let it derail what God has planned for us. Like if it would have derailed with this guy, with this guy's ministry, ultimately would have ended up being had he gone with what his mentor was telling him to do. And they're still in relationship. You know, there's no bad feelings or anything. Like I said, it's just that his mentor just could not see, you know, what God was doing in his life, because he wasn't there in the relationship between him and between the mentee and the God, and his God's, you know, his relationship with God telling him what his plans were. So there's another example of a constructive transition happened between Jesus and Peter. So in Matthew 16:15, Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do you say I am?" And Peter is the only one who knows and says, "You are the Christ, you are the Son of the living God." So because of how Peter answered Jesus, Jesus pronounced his blessing on Peter later, like a couple verses down, in Matthew 16, 17 through 19. So, but in the same chapter, Jesus prepares the disciples for his coming death. But here, Peter rebukes him and says, "No, you're not going to do this. I'm not going to let this happen." So in between the verse 17 and verse 23, Peter is exalted. But then when he gets down to telling Jesus no, meaning I'm not going to let you do what God is trying to tell you to do, Jesus calls Peter a stumbling block, because he's only thinking of himself and not the things of God. Peter is. So Jesus shares with the disciples the plan God has for him, and Peter says no. So now Peter is in the way of what Jesus' destiny is. And then the Bible says that Jesus turned and spoke to Peter, but another translation of the word turned is turned away from. So up to this point, Peter and Jesus were going in the same direction. Jesus tells Peter to get behind him. So that's a change in place. Peter he's no longer walking beside Jesus because he's not in agreement with what God is wanting Jesus to do. So he has to step back so Jesus can move forward. So, okay. So there are 5 what they call ahas of constructive transition. So maybe you sense God is leading you to another city, but your parents want you to stay in your hometown. Or maybe you want to start your own business, but your spouse wants you to stay in that job that's bringing in a good paycheck. So these are some examples of how God can be leading you one way and then somebody's telling you not to go that way. So realize that everyone can't see and understand what you do. God leads you in a particular direction. You perceive what he's doing, and he's preparing you for a change. Sorry. He's preparing you for a change. You may only be able to see how that place you are going is exactly the right next step for you. You're the only one that's going to be that sees that. But because this is something that God is doing, like I said, is doing in your life, the people around you, they can't sense it or discern where God is trying to lead you. They may not even recognize the general direction he's trying to move you into.
Yeah.
So these dynamics may be indicators of a need for a transition in that relationship, to move that person out of a what's the word I'm trying to look for? I don't know, out of a lead in your life. Put that person maybe be in the back of you, not up here. Maybe bring them down a little bit. Not that didn't sound right. Not bring them down. You know what I mean? It means
they're not as significant a influence.
Right. Right.
Because I'm sitting here trying to think of the words. They're not influence anymore.
That's
it. And I'm trying to think of what the word is, because he doesn't use it, but significant influence in your life anymore.
Yes. Okay, so they may be voicing opposition because they have, like I said, they have not been with you through the entire thought process you've been going back and forth with God about. They haven't been listening to your prayers, or be with you when you seek in God for direction. So they yes, Mother Trout.
So I was thinking about that. So the first scenario that you gave us with the mentor and the mentee. So the mentor does sound like he may have been a little into himself. So like what happened with Peter, between verse 17 and 23.
Yes.
Peter kind of got a little exalted. And so it seems like the mentor probably felt, well, I'm the mentor, so this is what I'm telling you that you should do, because I can see that this makes more sense. And
he was coming from his own experience.
Exactly.
Yes,
right.
He was coming from his own experience of what happened to him.
Yeah. So he did need to be brought down a little bit. So with mentor, he was up here, right? So he he got brought down and went on the side.
Yeah. And I mean, he was still happy for the guy,
Right.
After, but there had to be an adjustment. Yeah. Okay. So I was saying, okay. So yeah. So these other people, they want what's best for you, but they just don't understand what that best is, because like I said, they're not in your head with God and you having this conversation on where he's trying to take you. So know that building blocks, like Peter, he started off as a building block. They can later become stumbling blocks, like Peter. So when someone moves from helping you to hindering you, that's an indication that there may be time for a transition in that relationship. Like I said, with Peter and Jesus, Peter went from being a building block to a stumbling block. Now, the author gives another example. When he was in college, he joined a fraternity, and it taught him, about sponsorships and scholarships and manhood. He got a lot of benefit from being in the fraternity, and a lot of fun. However, after college, he began preparing for his ministry, and realized he couldn't, keep hanging out with his fraternity people, fraternity brothers, and do the things that God wanted him to do in the same thing, that couldn't keep doing it. So he had to transition those relationships he had with his frat brothers. He still kept in touch with them and everything, but he just had to do it in a different way. So like being a part of that fraternity had built a building block. In beginning, it was advantage to him, but continuing to socialize and stay in the same kind of relationships, that would have been a stumbling block to him in his ministry. then another example he gives of a constructive relation or transition is when he was younger, his mother and father divorced. His father moved to Germany. So after he graduated high school, I believe, or college, one of them, he had an opportunity to go to Germany and live with his father. And they became very close. It was a very loving relationship. They got to know each other. He was very happy there. So they grew to love each other very, very deeply. And when it came for him to the son to leave, because he got a job offer in Florida, his father did not want him to go because he didn't want him to leave. You know, he had got this close relationship, and he just loved him, and he didn't want him to go. So his father was trying to block his destiny. That's what the ultimate action was. He wasn't doing it on purpose. He was just thinking, I love my son. I don't want him to go away. We want to keep building on this relationship. So if he had stayed, he wouldn't have been able to build his relationship, you know, his ministry. So that was kind of pulling him away from God. So he was simply grateful that God had given him a chance to get to know his dad and to build this meaningful relationship. But his dad did not want to lose that. But eventually, you know, he came to realize his dad came to realize this is what needed to be done. And in the case of Jesus and Peter wasn't angry with or opposed to Jesus when he begged Jesus not to go to the cross. He was just thinking, I don't want my friend to die. You know, he didn't intentionally speak against God's plan. That's ultimately what he was doing, but he didn't see it that way. He didn't want his friend to die. So most of the time when people stand in your way, they're not being difficult, but they just rather speaking up because they love you and they want what's best for you. Again, they may not know what that best is. So the challenge for us in these situations is to understand and receive their love, but also put everything about the situation in perspective, and to move forward to where God leads you, not to where they're wanting to lead you. And so to be confident that the relationship can remain intact, even though you're moving this person from whatever level they hold in your life, they're still going to hold some kind of position in your life. You're not going to just throw them away. I mean, these are people that generally love you and want, like I said. So Peter, he remains a visible part in Jesus' life even after that relationship transitions. Even after Jesus says, you know, Peter, you got to get behind me because we're not in the same space. Peter's at the Last Supper, and he's with Jesus at Gethsemane. You know, the garden, that place. So relationships, they can endure the transition. It's not going to hurt. It may hurt, you know, but it's not going to end that relationship. So they don't have to end, but the roles do have to change. So Jesus repositions Peter. He doesn't send him away. He doesn't send Peter away, and Peter doesn't leave. They both accept Peter's new role, and even though they have this major misunderstanding, the relationship is never severed. It's just simply changes. Relationships require regular investments of time. We said this way back then, way earlier. Relationships require investments of time, energy, communication, and care. But once a relationship is built and the value established, allowing them to rest or be restructured at certain times because one person is moving ahead, that's okay. You can change how a relationship is structured. And that changing how it is structured is better than just letting it go, than just throwing that relationship away. Yes. Deacon.
I got a question. With the memorial service coming up, there are going to be people in my life that have been repositioned.
Mhm.
How do I interact with them and not let the past interfere?
Ooh, Deacon, you be having some deep questions. Well, I'll say in your head, remember that this person does not hold that same level of authority over you that they had back then. So keep that in mind. They don't have an investment in you like they did before.
Right.
You have to take care of yourself. So you continue to be cordial. How you doing? Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here.
Right.
Moving.
Okay. Got it.
Ultimately, the love is still there. Like she
Yeah.
said, the love is still in the relationship, but the relationship has shifted. And that's the point that's the point that's running through this whole chapter, is that the relationship shifts, but you don't lose that basic love and caring for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. That's
Got it.
Yep. Okay, so this comes to a good point. So remain hopeful that the relationship can still remain intact, because there could be a possibility in the future of restoring that relationship to where it was before. So any relationship that goes through a constructive transition has the potential to be restored. Sometimes both parties return to their previous roles, whatever those roles were. Sometimes they just, given the situation, that person moves back into that role they had before. But more often, one or both parties enter into situations that are a part of God's plan for their lives. And what gets restored aren't those former positions in the relationship, but the level of synergy and intimacy they once knew. Like Deacon, in your case, those people may not have that same position they held in your life, but you still have the same intimacy with them, and there's still
Yes.
energy between those two. You're still on a different level. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. So the keys to a restoration are shared values and shared vision. If you still have a shared value and a shared vision with those relationships or those people, that's a good case where that roles can be restored, because you're coming back to that same level that you were before. So after Jesus' resurrection, he says to Peter, "Do you truly love me more than these?" And Peter answers, "Yes." And Jesus responds, "Feed my lambs." So Jesus gives Peter in this scenario 3 chances to verbalize his love and acknowledge that his values are the same as Jesus. So at that point, the relationship is restored, because now they're back to where it was before.
Right.
Okay. Oh, we came to the end. We did go through this quick. So we're now to the points that we covered in this chapter. I'm going to run through these. This is summary of what. Yes, Mother Trout, you on mute.
You go ahead and finish what you were saying, and then I'll say what I was saying.
Well, no, go ahead, because I was getting ready to run through the summary of what we discussed.
I was going to say that, when you say restore, it's not, and you had mentioned it before, but maybe a little more emphasis could be put on that it may not restore back to the way that it was.
Right.
But the relationship could be restored, but your actual roles or positions may not be the same.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas
Oh,
I think that that's how it would be with Deacon. I don't think that theirs would be.
oh yeah, I think that's the exact situation in her case. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that that would be. It would be the same. The roles would
No,
definitely.
because
Right.
they're not, as what she, from what she's saying, they don't
Right.
continue to share her values and her, you know what I'm saying? They
Right.
don't, what, I don't know what the other word I use, values and something else.
But if you have the same, like if you're all Christians, let's say,
Right.
you have a basic core Christian love for each other, then
Right.
you have that. It's the
Right.
roles that are shifting. And I think
Exactly.
that's the whole thing. The relationship is not totally new and it's not totally restored,
Right.
but it is
Renewed.
renewed in a way that means you don't have the same roles in it anymore, but
Right.
you have a basic, using Christianity as an example, you have a same basic belief in God.
Right.
If
Right.
that's what that core belief is, and if you know that, okay. Now, as opposed to not having the same vision,
Right. Right.
it's neither here nor there, but I think that's what Marsha's getting at is you just, like I think Mother Trout said that it's renewed, it's restored, but it's just not the same. But
Right.
that's
Different.
and you don't have to explain to somebody, but our relationship is not the same. They already know.
Right.
They
Right.
probably already know that.
Yeah.
But
They'll feel it.
you can just for yourself say, but this is what it is.
Right.
Right.
And know that it's a different relationship, and you've moved on or they've moved on or whatever. I think one of the examples, like Elder Marcia said, was like the fraternity brothers, and then he also mentioned being married and not married, and how his friends who, when they weren't married, they would let's all go for pizza, and and then when somebody would get married, everything shifted, and
Everything changed.
things as frequently because they had different roles, but they still cared about each other, but it had to be done in a more purposeful way if they wanted to get together, because they had to consider other people. So
Right.
it's just like life changes your priorities, and so it shifts that relationship, and your priorities and your shifting of all of that may change your relationship. And that's what happened.
I got it.
Yep.
I got it.
I think Mother Trout made really good points when she said it's kind of renewed but not the same.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So oh yes, Brother Elder Terrell. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, I hear you now. Yes.
Okay, Elder Marcia, and I've enjoyed what I've heard thus far. I'm sorry I had my my video hidden for a while, but anyways, I've enjoyed what I've heard. The constructive transition is what we're talking about, right? And so I think about in the example of folk who have been in the closet pretty much for most of their life, you know, in regard to the LGBT community, and they come out, and then things change. You know, I have family members that I, you know, would associate with, you know, many years ago. I guess. I mean, sometimes they can tell, but you know, growing up, but no one said anything. Right. Now that you're more out front with it, you know, you can tell that things have changed. You know, they don't, you know, associate or with you as much as they used to, you know, or as close to you as they used to be. But, you know, they still love you. You know, they still talk, we speak, and we, you know, communicate and everything, but it's just different.
Right.
And, you know, and I can't change that about them. I'm not going to change. Definitely can't change who I am. So,
right.
You know, we just deal with it, and we, you know, just find ways to work with it, work around it, I guess, so to speak. But yeah.
Yeah, that's an example, I think.
I understand it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a good example, because these people, like it's at one point, you guys, they held a different position, you know, in your life, you know, and now that you're out, or that they see that, they kind of fall back. And it's constructive transition can happen. Any party can, you know, can what do you call it, start it or whatever, can initiate a change in the relationship. And like you said, you didn't start it, you didn't change it, they changed it. So yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so no matter how close or important a relationship is, you may reach a point at which you must adjust the relationship in order to obey what God is telling you to do in your life, in order to move. I get one more political call. Okay, so what was I saying? Oh, no matter how close or important a relationship is, you may reach a point in that relationship where God is telling you to do something, and they're not on board with it. That's indication there may be a time for a transition. A constructive transition is rarely easy, but it may be necessary to reach the next level of success and purpose in your life. And remember, there's 5 ahas of constructive transition. So these are things that may be a clue. I wouldn't say that they're a clue. Anyway, 5 aha moments in a constructive transition. So everyone cannot always see what you see and understand what you understand. So remember that when they're coming at you with something different, just remember that they may not be seeing what you're seeing, with, you know, what God is showing you. Building blocks, like Peter, can become stumbling blocks. Like later on, Peter became a stumbling block. People usually want what's best for you. And transition doesn't have to mean the end of a relationship. And restoration is always an option. You can always restore it, depending on where the other person left it. Yeah. So when a positive, genuine relationship reaches a point where transition is needed, it's a good time for both parties. I mean, not a good time. It's a sore point or a tender time. It's kind of a touchy situation for both parties. So handle the transition with, you know, gentleness, compassion, because the goal is essentially or effectively changing the places while keeping the relationship intact. I mean, if you want to keep it intact, I mean, yeah. So when you try to remove this person to a different position, try to be nice about it. If it's that overt, it may not be that overt. It may be like in the case of Brother Terrell. It's just, you know, slowly but surely things started changing. Nobody said anything, but how he related to his family, or how his family related to him, changed. Okay, so now we get to the questions. Let's see, what do I want to find? Let's pick out a good one. Oh, okay, here, I'm gonna do this one.
Can I say something real fast?
Yes.
You know, sometimes, this just came to my mind. I'm sorry, I'm eating.
Oh, you're fine.
But some people have a hard time seeing you transition and become different, become better than what you were before. And if they were in a position of leadership, you know, way long ago, and you were always struggling, or you are always the one who lacked, and all of a sudden you become a person who is in place of authority and power, leadership, and they fall back. Sometimes people don't agree with that. They have a hard time, and they want to distance themselves from it. So in that case, I don't know, I guess that wouldn't be called constructive transitioning, but that happens sometimes. People, once people are succeeding, they become a little funny.
Well, I don't know. Elder, what do you think?
I'd have to say that sometimes it's you choose to reconstruct the relationship, and other times it just sort of happens based on, like, when she was describing the son needing to move back to Florida, it just happens, so the relationship had to change. And other times it's intentional because you're growing. I look at it as a growth thing. You're growing and becoming more confident in whatever it is, your relationship with the Lord or whatever. You're growing, and that person, and I think Mother Trout said it, they think they have more experience. They think they could tell you better from their experience, and they're concerned about you, but they're not allowing you that ability to grow and become more. And so there's a little struggle, and I think Elder Marcia said that you have to be careful in the struggle, because it's a tender, sore point. And that's where, like, you could completely break the relationship, or it's a little rough, and then when you come back together at some point, that they can recognize your growth. So I view it as a growth thing, that you're growing. And sometimes, especially if they're a mentor of some sort, it's hard for a mentor sometimes to allow you to make the mistakes and to grow and learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
And again, Elder hit the nail on the head when she said, and they don't have, or they're not hearing from God what you are. And, sometimes they can confirm it for you and say, yes, I can confirm that that's a good thing. But other times they're not there. That's not bad. It's just, they're not there. So I think it's hard to say that it happens one way or another, but I think I have to, for me, it feels like a growth thing. You're growing, and if the other person is struggling to allow that growth, that can be an issue. Or, and Elder Marcia talked about some of the other things that are issues, but it can be a very a sensitive time, so you don't lose that relationship. Because a lot of times you want to keep those relationships because that person may still be a very important person in your life because of your history, and you may need to go back to them for some reason and say, I need your assistance or your opinion or whatever. It's just you don't have that same constant, the same kind of relationship. Does that help? Go ahead.
And also, to hopefully be able to keep the relationship, because one thing you don't want is it to be broken, because God is definitely about relationships. We want to keep good, sound relationships. But some people, and I think a lot of people would be like this, they don't know how to handle it. Here's the change. It's different now. It's not the same as it used to be. And so they don't know how to handle that. They don't want to to give up. They don't want the relationship broken, but they don't know how to maintain it. And so hopefully you would know how to maintain it, because somebody would have to know. And and as elders, as both the elders had previously said, you want to be careful with it, because this could push them further away, because they may feel like they could either offend you or you offend them, or there'd be so much discomfort in there. So you just it's a real touchy. Elder Cindy said it's a real touchy situation. So you really do have to be careful with it, and especially when they you have the love there. You have the love there. Oh, you know what? Sorry. I hit that video thing by mistake. You have the love there. And so because that love is there, that definitely means that they didn't want it severed, the relationship severed. So it is touchy. You would have to be careful, but I think that you might want to really keep, at the forefront of your mind that they may not know how to handle it.
And when you're dealing with emotions,
right,
and people who have set roles in a relationship, this is how our relationship has always been. Mm-hmm. And when something starts to change, some people, and we've talked about it before, some people don't deal with change very well. Not only in themselves, but they don't like when other people around them change. So, or that things are changing, how come you're changing? How come this is changing? Some people are so set in their ways and their expectations of how their relationships are and how people act and who does what. Some people just don't deal with change very well. And it becomes an emotional response initially. And sometimes it just takes, it's a time, it takes time. And I don't know how long, because it's different for everyone. But if you ever notice that if you give some people time, it seems like it gets better. They can come back to relating to you again. And they seem to understand a little bit about how you've changed, or they seem to have a little bit better insight. Maybe they don't. Maybe they just accept that the relationship's changed and they still don't get it, but that's okay. But I think what's important is, like, we're doing this book so that we know, we're learning so much so that we know how to handle these things, because we're going to run across people who don't know. And I know for me, I look at this and I go, this is amazing information, because then when something does happen and something does within a relationship, whether it's building it, severing it, adjusting it, however, we're learning better insights on how do we handle it better and maybe help the other person handle it better.
That's good. All right, so one of the questions is, let's see here. Oh, okay, I'm gonna do this. So have you ever hindered anyone from pursuing God's plan because you did not understand everything that person understood? How do you wish you had handled the situation differently? And if you have not already done so, would you follow Pastor Saunders is the example we gave, what was his name?
Dan Moody.
The pastor that, oh shoot, I forgot. Anyway, just answer the first part of the question. I can't remember. Have you ever,
Say it again.
So have you ever hindered, well, the part I was having problems with is, if you have not already done so, would you follow Pastor Saunders' example and apologize? I can't remember, Cindy, maybe you remember, which the pastor, he refers
is his mentor, who said, I don't think I should buy the building. And what happened, just so you all know, he came back later after he saw the success. He came back and they privately got together, and he apologized and said, I was wrong. I didn't see what you saw. You were right and I was wrong. And it mended the relationship, and it also allowed for that shift to happen. Yeah. So that's who
Pastor Sanders was. So I'll start again. So, have you ever hindered anyone from pursuing God's plan because you didn't understand everything that person understood? So we'll do that part first. Have you ever stood in the way of God working in somebody else?
I don't think so. And if I did, it was unintentional.
We hope so.
I don't think I set out to hurt anybody or to block them.
And that's typically what happens. We kind of get in the way and don't know we in the way.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when someone says, hey, I want to do this, and you don't understand, and I've had people say, you ask too many questions. Mm-hmm. I ask a lot of questions because I need to understand what you're hearing from God, mm-hmm. and how can I support you. But a lot of times that makes people feel like they're being doubted.
Right.
So for me, it's like, well, I don't think of it like you. I don't think I intentionally did, but I think it might have felt that way if somebody said, I have this, I want to do blah. And I go, I don't understand. Like, explain to me what that means.
Right.
Like, what does that look like? Especially if it's something I'm not familiar with. So I would say that for me too, I would hope not intentionally, but I could see where it would feel that way by somebody might feel that way. If I looked at him and I said, I don't know if I can support you because I don't know what you're doing.
Anybody else?
So I did stand in, I was a stumbling block.
Ooh, do
I
tell.
know I was. So it was when Pastor first came out. He was still married, and I was like, how could you do this? The first fire, or the first big problem that comes your way, and you all give up, because they had already discussed it. They had already made the decision to divorce. And I was like, no, that's not right. I'm like, and I'm telling them, I'm like, no, that's not right. You all get the first problem that comes up to you, and then you just ready to just throw it all away. So you need to look at this. You need to look at this a different way. You need to go to God.
And they had already been to God, and you come and tell them to go back.
And I told them, you need to. Well, I figured
you better go back and check again.
I figured they didn't go to the right God, because wherever they went, they were not being given the right information. And so, that's where I was. Now I was really, I tell you, I was really, really torn to bits. And I blamed Pastor so much. I really did. He really took a lot from me. But I did like this pastor did in this scenario. I did come back around and apologized. Yeah. So I did fix it. I don't have to do it now because I already did. Got that out the way. But that's good. and I still, I still stayed there, and I still, went to the class, and everything. But even after the class, I was still holding on to that, what I thought they should do. But I learned, I realized it, and I did come back and apologize.
That's a good example.
That's a great example.
Yes,
You went to
it
the
is.
wrong God. I'm going to use that one.
Yeah.
I did.
You heard from the wrong God.
I did. I really felt like they didn't talk to the right God at the right. They thought. I said they thought they talked to him, but that ain't right. Because I'm like, sometimes that self is what's in the way. And I'm like, they had self in the way. And I didn't. I didn't have self in the way.
Oh, I'm going to use that. I mean, like, I'm sorry, you're talking to the wrong guy.
Right. Oh, God.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I can do one more question. Let's see. Oh, okay. This might be an easy one. I don't know if it's easy or not. Is there a relationship in your life that needs a constructive transition right now? And based on the understanding you've gained from this chapter, how will you move forward with that? So if you have a relationship right now that needs to be kind of steered constructively, constructive transition, how would you go about doing that? That's a hard question.
Yes.
Yeah, you just said it was going to be easy.
I did say it was going to be easy, didn't I?
Marsha,
this chapter may not have no easy questions.
you're reading the wrong question.
I know. Well, let's see. Let me try this one.
I am.
You are? Okay.
I have, I told you all of a situation that I experienced maybe a couple of life class sessions ago in regard to someone coming to me and under false pretense having me, get a hold of some money, gather some
money.
The loan.
Yeah.
So that they can do something, and I don't think did or even intended to do what they told me that they were going to do. So I'm making them pay it back. So, I think it's going to take some time. They are paying it back, by the way. Thank you, Father. And, I think it's going to take some time for them not to be mad, because I guess they thought that I was a sucker. They just getting over.
They get over it.
And just Terrell got money, and let's go to him and see what we can get out of him. You know what I'm saying? In my mind. So
yeah.
I'm making them pay it back, and I guess they feel some kind of way about it, even when we talking from one of the points.
They holding a grudge, I can you did something wrong.
I can tell you, right? I can tell, something in his voice is not quite there. But I talk to him. I don't get upset and cuss him out and nothing like that. I try not to do or say anything that will cause an argument, but prayerfully, hopefully, maybe over time, the things will get better. So that's what I'm praying for.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else? Go ahead.
No, I'm just dealing with my daughter.
Oh, okay.
I just promised I wouldn't say what was going on, but.
All right. Well,
I was going to say, I don't know about right now, but I do know that in the past, I've had situations where I felt that shift had to happen, and the struggle of someone not allowing, like I described, the growth in me and the change in me, and they kept pushing and saying, no, you're always this way. And I'm like, but I'm changing and you're not allowing me to. And I'm working on things to make myself a better person, blah, blah, blah. It was a work situation. And it was really a struggle, because they were convinced that my behavior would always had to be this, because this is what they knew. And I kept saying, no, it's not. I'm trying to, get better and do things differently and make changes, but they wouldn't accept the changes because they had expectation I would always respond this way to everything. Instead of saying, no, I'm going to respond this way, and I was trying to be more constructive, and they were preparing for something different. And I kept saying no. And so again, they just couldn't, it was a former supervisor of mine. He just couldn't accept a change or a difference, because anything that I did had to be this.
Yeah.
Like this level of whatever. And I would say, but that's not what happened. And he'd say, but you're always that way. And I'm like, no, I'm not. You know, it was if someone didn't like something I did, it was always my fault, because he thought I always was too aggressive. Put it that way. And I kept backing down and and trying to not be aggressive and not be too assertive and not do these things. And these people were starting to roll over top of me, and then go to him and say, well, she did blah, blah, blah. And he'd say, because you're too aggressive. And I'm like, but I didn't do that. So it was like, I was trying to shift and make changes. He was not allowing for that to happen. Yeah. And ultimately, that relationship, we are cordial to each other. We still talk to each other. We're friends on Facebook, but honestly, my respect level for him is not there. And I just, I think the difference is allowing for someone to grow.
Yeah.
And having been the person who's trying to make changes for the better and not being allowed to, that's hard. And so that there was I still have a relationship with him. I still care, because we were friends before he was ever my supervisor, which is very weird. We were friends for many years, and then he became my supervisor. And it had to shift into something else, but it was uncomfortable for a long time. And now it's comfortable, but it certainly isn't what it was.
It was, yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't have that influence in my life. And he doesn't have the respect that I had for him, if that makes sense. So I don't know about anything right now, but I would say that's what it made me think of when I read the chapter. And as we